MOSKY has their own bet on crunch and distortion tones from the famous MOSKY Brown sound. Is it any good? Let's talk about it. Welcome back, my friend Stone Chaser, to one more budget pedal review. This time we will talk about the world of drive, crunch and distortion. The chosen pedal for the round is the MOSKY Brown Distortion, which is not a fresh release, but honestly, it's quite an underrated pedal considering what MOSKY claims to offer on this project. The MOSKY Brown is part of the hand-wired line of MOSKY Audio, which is already famous on the budget world for offering utility pedals like tap tempo, additional foot switches, and even some budget mini pedals as the famous Golden Horse. The difference of this pedal compared to the MOSKY standard product line is that they are not made with integrated PCB circuits, but actually with standard components and circuit boards. But what is the benefit of it? Those type of circuits are eligible for repairs and customizations, but integrated PCB circuits are not. Still talking about circuits, we need also to enlighten that this is not an original project by MOSKY. This is expected to be a one-to-one clone of the Wampler Pinnacle, a high-ending Marshall-like distortion pedal that got famous for its versatility on tonal ranges. Is it ethical to copy this circuit? It is important to understand that the topic of circuit cloning is a complex discussion, on which is even more difficult to have consensus, but anyway, we can highlight some points that give some protection to MOSKY in this case. If you research the world of the pedal forums, you will find several handmade projects that clone the Wampler Pinnacle, so it somehow makes the circuit already available for public use. Another important point is that they didn't copy any reference of the original pedal, with the objective to leverage Wampler's prestige on the market. Actually, it is really difficult to understand on which pedal the MOSKY Brown is based on. The aim of this review will not be to compare if MOSKY achieved the one-to-one clone of Wampler, as this is already done on the internet. Anyway, we can try to evaluate if the MOSKY Brown delivers value for the price it's actually sold for. Let's talk a little bit about the build quality of the pedal. The MOSKY Brown is a true bypass circuit on a full metal enclosure. It has the aspect of brushed steel, and on the pedal facing you'll find another metal sheet with the description of its functionalities. I can easily tell you that the pedal doesn't look cheap like the Golden Horse, but there is nothing special in terms of visuals. It reminds me a lot of the finishing style of Exotic, like the RC Booster, for example. In terms of functionality, I need to admit that the foot switch, switches and knobs are pretty good. They are soft, noiseless and really functional. The LED comes in blue and no internal trim pots can be found on it. Now let's talk a little bit about the knobs and controls for tonal adjustments. The pedal has 4 knobs and 2 switches that will assist you to reach the tone you are looking for. The 2 upper red ones are the EQ knobs, with adjustments of tone and contour. The bottom ones are the saturation with the volume and gain. The upper switch is a change between vintage and modern modes, which in practice injects more bright when changed to modern mode. And the lower switch is a boost, which in practice changes the gain ranges from crunch when boost is off to a high gain distortion when the boost is on. I need to anticipate that the high gain sounds much better when it's in the maximum at 2 o'clock, and it's stacked by another drive pedal, like for example a tube screamer type pedal. For the EQ, we need to understand how those 2 knobs interact with each other. The best way to explain it is by describing which part of the sound spectrum they act. The tone works as a high-pass filter, enabling your sound to be wide open when maximized to a muffled sound when minimized. The tone adjustment is pretty sensible, in a sense that on minimum settings it's still pleasant to be used. Now talking about the contour, it has a straight effect on which part of the spectrum you would like to emphasize, in a sense that when it's on maximum, there is a high nuance of the mids, and when moved to minimum, it scoops the mids and boosts the lows. By playing with those 2 knobs and also combining with the Vint mod switch to inject brightness, you're able to find endless tonal combinations. Let's take a look on how those 2 controls influence on the sound of the pedal. Great! But what about the drive characteristics? First of all, we need to highlight that the characteristics of this pedal are much more PLEXI-like than a JCM style. On what comes to adjustments and sensibility to gain, the pedal reacts really well to input volume dynamics. Let's take a look on how this pedal cleans up when reducing the volume of the input. Amazing, eh? But let's talk a little bit about the adjustments. First of all, the gain reduction creates a perceptive loss of volume, so be prepared to compensate it on the volume knob. Also, if the gain knob is moved to minimum, the pedal gets mute, so if you expect to work with almost clean sounds, be prepared to adjust it on the input volume by adjusting on the guitar or on a volume pedal. As mentioned before, the gain knob has a good adjustment range, and when mixed with the boost, it's possible to get from almost a cleanish crunch sound until a high gain distortion when engaged the boost switch. After 2 o'clock, when engaged the boost, the sound gets muddy, so once again, I strongly suggest you to find the optimal sweet spot on the lower gain and work with an external boosting option. Let's hear a little some of the differences on the gain and volume ranges. If you would like to see more combinations of adjustments, I'll keep here in the card the link for the full non-talking review of this pedal. Now let's talk about price ranges. The MOSKY Brown Distortion is currently being sold on the price of $45 on the AliExpress, so for a drive pedal on this level of flexibility sounds pretty reasonable. Anyway, we need to highlight that this is not the Wampler pinnacle and should not be considered as one-to-one clone, especially on what regards to finishing, reliability of the circuits, quality controls, customer service, and etc. So to conclude this review and answer if this pedal deserves a space on your pedal board, I strongly believe it is the most flexible brown sound drive pedal on the affordable market, but with high attention points on the ethical side of cloning a circuit. I need to admit that the lines of cloning a circuit, in my opinion, are really wide, especially when it comes to the fact that the majority of the third world countries would never be able to afford an original boutique pedal. So in this sense, I see this type of project as a good way to make more democratic the high-ending guitar tone. Let me know your opinion about this topic, let's talk about it. Leave your comment below. Anyway, I would like also to highlight one comment that I received from one subscriber on the No Talking review, claiming that MOSK had a totally unprofessional and unethical behavior towards this client as an OEM project. We as customers should always push companies to act with correctness and diligence when it comes to customer service, so I advise you to have it in mind when deciding between the MOSKY Brown or any other competitor. Finally, I would like to do some honorable mentions of alternatives to the MOSKY Brown, which are the NUX or NUX PLEXI Crunch and the K-Line Jaguar. But be aware that those two pedals navigate much more into high-gain world than really the crunch tones. I hope this review was somehow helpful to you. If yes, of course, please consider to subscribe to the channel, leave your like below so YouTube can push this video to many other people, and share it also on your social media. I'll catch you on the next. Keep on rocking!